Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a fun one. We are doing another 24-hour readathon. While I was editing this video, I realized that I never did an intro clip. And I noticed that for like the first few hours of this 24-hour readathon, I didn't talk to the camera. So I was clearly going through something at the beginning of day one. But I'm so happy to say that this readathon ended up being very successful. And I think that's for two reasons. First, and the biggest reason, is I specifically did not set a January TBR. I wanted to give myself some space for mood reading because at the end of 2024, I really felt like I was slipping into a reading slump. I think I started this readathon on like January 9th, and I hadn't really been reading or had finished a book since the year started. So I could tell that I needed to be a little bit more gentle with my brain and just see what books were speaking to me at that time. That ended up being the perfect mindset to take into this because I was a lot less miserable forcing myself to get through books. Another reason I was less miserable is there's a couple different ways to do a 24-hour readathon. I decided to break the 24 hours up into 2 days. So I was reading from roughly 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every single day. Those times ended up working so well for me because in the first 24-hour readathon I was going into like 1 a.m. and that was absolutely terrible. I also just let the timer run if I went to the gym, if I ate a meal, if I was talking to the camera, just so there were a few built-in brain breaks throughout the reading. And even with those caveats, we managed to get through 5 books in today's video. So there was a lot of good reading within this one. Before we hop in, make sure to like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy. First check-in since starting the readathon. We have 18 hours and 43 minutes left, and I just finished our first book, which was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I will say that the ending of this book went absolutely crazy, but this has taken me like 3 weeks to read. It doesn't look like it's the longest of books, but there is a lot of words on each of these pages. And the world building I found a little bit hard to keep up with. I feel like all of our characters have 3 names, so I kept getting confused with who was who. And we're watching 2 totally different perspectives play out, so it was a lot to keep track of. And I'm grateful to have this one done with. This book feels like it's gonna be pretty hard to summarize, but this is a fantasy novel where we get dual POV following Laya and Elias. The world they live in is cruel, dark, brutal. A lot of dark themes going on within this book, I'm gonna be real honest with you, which is why it took me so long to get through. I had to take so many breaks. But Laya is a 17-year-old girl from a family of scholars. And long ago, these scholars were conquered by this empire and have been really subjected to a lot of very cruel and terrible conditions. A lot of them have been killed or sold into slavery. And we meet Laya whenever her home gets raided, some of her family is killed, and her brother is sent away for being believed to help with this resistance movement. She manages to get away, locate the resistance movement, and she ends up working as a spy for them within this training academy called Blackcliff. And so she ends up going to Blackcliff, which is like the most dangerous place for her to be, to try and gain more information. The second POV we get is Elias, who is a soldier in training at Blackcliff. While you think it would be better to be a soldier than a slave within this school academy, he hates everything about his life and what he's being trained to do, and he has dreams of defecting and escaping from this empire that he's a part of. Their stories become intertwined. There's also a series of trials that we follow that are incredibly brutal and are part of a prophecy, which is kind of where this book ends off. And I feel like there's going to be a lot that happens in book 2 to expand this world, because mostly this book just takes place in Blackcliff or right around Blackcliff, but I feel like we're going to see a lot more of the world moving forward. There just honestly was a lot to follow in this story, a lot of characters, a lot of scheming and lying and betrayals. And this one took a lot of brain power. It took so much longer to read than I was expecting. I think it was wonderfully written, just maybe something that's not super enjoyable to read. So I'll save my rating for the end because I think I am gonna need to think about this one a little bit more. And as the readathon is still going, we're gonna need to choose our next book. Since this one took so much brain power, I will be choosing something that requires next to no brain power. So let's go ahead, look at my physical TBR, and probably choose a little romance to read from here. Okay, so sitting in front of my TBR, we have a ton of choices because really I'm just limiting myself to an easy romance. Also, I didn't set a specific TBR for January, so I am keeping this pretty open. So let's go ahead and see what's catching my eye right now. This book has kind of been intriguing me recently, The Love of My Afterlife. I've heard that this is just kind of a silly, goofy time. It is about like 360 pages, so maybe a little bit longer than I originally thought. But this is giving me The Good Place vibes because this lady dies, and as she's in the waiting room between Earth and the afterlife, she meets the love of her life. So she has a chance to go back to Earth and find him and fall in love with him, I think. But this just seems like completely silly and ridiculous, but I do think it would be a fun read. Another book that sounds really good is Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto. This is almost the exact same length as the other one, around 360 pages. I do have this one as an audiobook, so this could be a really good contender because there's a couple things I need to do around the house. But this is following two musicians, and I think it's kind of like a rivals to lovers story as they're battling for first place or first chair within this orchestra that they're both in. Next is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonam-Young. I really want to read this soon. I've heard so many good things about this book. It is following completely around an accidental pregnancy. That is the whole plot of the book. But even though that's a lot of people's most hated trope, I've heard that this one is just so special. The love story is so endearing. So this is a very probable read for this 24-hour readathon. And then I think from there I have like two Tara DeWitt books, which are supposed to be just like spicy fun times. Both of these are giving me major summer energy though. And as today is like the coldest day of the year for us, I don't really know if these are fitting the vibes. So that would leave us with these three books to pick from. I really want to read all of these, I'm gonna be so honest. But since I do have this as an audiobook, I think I am gonna prioritize this first. I still have my Christmas stuff up, y'all. It is January 9th, so I know some people would have a big problem with that, but I just need to take it down. I need a fresh start. I need to start the new year off right. I think I'll read a little bit of this and then probably listen to some while taking all my Christmas decorations down. Update time. I think we're about 9 hours in because I have 15 hours and 9 minutes left. And I never thought I'd say this within a 24-hour readathon, but the time's going by really fast. Maybe I'm just reading excessively slow. I just hit halfway through Not Another Love Song. I gotta say, I am really liking this. I've heard people say that because they're two musicians and they end up playing a lot of music together, that you really fall into those music scenes with them. I didn't know how that would be for me because I played music whenever I was in like 6th grade, but I have to say, like, especially through the audiobook, you really feel like you're there. Almost every breath they take, you're almost taking with them. The audiobook narrator's done a really good job of placing you there, even though the author's using a lot of musical term jargon that I'm not fully following. I'm still able to enjoy the story fully. To finish out this book, one of my New Year's goals is to hit 10,000 steps a day. And as you've probably noticed, doing a readathon, you're on the couch a lot, reading, not doing much walking. So I'm gonna set up the walking pad in my office to try and get some steps in. Gonna turn back on the audiobook and read along with it in case I need to tap anything, because their romance is heating up and I really do like their relationship because he is giving such tortured artist, but like in a very endearing way. And I'm just really loving watching them connect over music, which is taking me by surprise. So let's go ahead, hop on the walking pad and hit our steps goal. This book was so cute. I have already texted one of my friends saying you need to add this to your TBR immediately. This is so good. This is one of the best romances I've read in a while, and this is one of those books that brings you out of a reading slump, because I feel like I've been in a reading slump and this book is making me love reading again. I don't have enough good things to say about this. Their romance is so good. Their connection over music, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's so impactful. Even if you're not super into music yourself, or playing music yourself, I should say, them bonding and connecting over it, like, you can just feel how deep their bond is and how deep their relationship is. I loved this. This was amazing. So we love to see that for our second book of the readathon. This was so incredible. Okay, I just had to take a few minutes to text my friend about this book and tell her how good it was. So that only leaves us with 31 minutes left for this half of the readathon. I have a book that is not even going to compare at all to the last book we read, but I am 60% of the way through, and it's on Kindle Unlimited, and it's a very quick read. This is No More Secrets by Lucy Score. This is also a very spicy little romance book. However, this is following a city girl journalist who goes and stays on this farm for a week to do an article about this farm's story, the farmer behind it, yada yada yada. I'm reading this because it's actually part of a series, and I accidentally bought book 2 in my recent haul, not realizing that there was a book 1, and book 1 is No More Secrets. So I just wanted to get an idea of this world before I hopped into book 2. I will be so honest, like, I don't know if I'm loving Lucy Score's writing. This is my first time reading from her, and I can't say that I'm super impressed. The insta love is so crazy within this book so far. If I could like fully jump in and embrace the relationship in that last book, I cannot at all within this current book. It's so unbelievable. Within 4 days, they were hooking up and acting like they were in love, and that is just so silly. But I'm just gonna push through and continue on because I think like my total read time on this book is less than 4 hours. It is so quick. So I'm just going to see how far I can get. I'm currently on chapter 20, 59% of the way through. We'll see where we can get to tonight. Just hit halfway. We will pause it here for now. I got to chapter 26, 72%. Nothing has changed. It's still very cringy, a little bit maybe poorly written, but there's only like an hour left of this book, so we're gonna forgive her. And I look forward to the book that we read after this. I'm truly shocked that I'm not more tired today because we're halfway through and I still feel pretty perky. I do think I read kind of slowly today, so we'll see what I get done tomorrow. We will definitely be finishing this one right away and hopefully, potentially, maybe reading 2 other books as well. So fingers crossed that happens. But for now, this is where I'm gonna call it a night, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Hi. Good morning. These are literally the first words spoken today. And I'm considerably less enthusiastic this morning than I felt yesterday. That is the second half of a 24-hour readathon energy. So that's where we're at. It is about to be 9:40, which is way later than I wanted to start, but alas, here we are. I'm going to be spending the first hour of this readathon just getting through the rest of this book, No More Secrets. I'll be honest, this is tracking so low on my star rating, but I only have like an hour left of the book, so I'm just gonna get over it and finish it out. But it just hit 9:40, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit start, and let's continue on. Just finished. I already know my rating for this book, but I'm gonna save it for later for you guys, so put in your guesses now. The insta love was so crazy on this one, but We were able to read that in 53 minutes, so we have 11 hours and 7 minutes left. What do we read next? Oh, I'm still kind of tired. Let's go ahead and go upstairs and look at those choices that we were talking about yesterday. Okay, so we are back with the TBR upstairs. I have to be so honest, since last night, I haven't been able to get out on a limb out of my mind because I really think this is going to be a 5-star as well. But since I just read 2 romances, I don't know if it's the best idea to read a 3rd romance in a row. I feel like we might not be giving this book the best chance. So with that in mind, I'm looking for something maybe a little bit shorter, but that is not a romance. And that is a little bit hard to do. If you watched my first 24-hour readathon, we could always continue with the natural series. That gave me some pretty funny content because I really hated the first book. I'm just too much of a scaredy cat for that series. Could continue on with the Belladonna series, but this is like 450 pages and probably too long. Most of the other fantasies I have are like 400 to 450 pages. My mom did gift this to me for Christmas, Starling House by Alix Harrow. This is actually insanely short for a fantasy book. It is 304 pages. It's a standalone. And I'm pretty sure it's like a gothic fantasy with this like sentient, maybe haunted house vibes. That's really all I know. I don't know much about this because this is kind of outside of my normal genre that I read, but maybe we give this a go. I really don't have like any expectations or knowledge going into this one, so this could be just like quite a ride for us and would be a nice little break from romance. So I think we're gonna read Starling House as our next book. Halfway update for Starling House, and we have 7 hours and 25 minutes left of the readathon. This book is so different than anything I've read. I guess the closest thing would be Belladonna because it is definitely gothic fantasy, but also Goodreads categorizes this as horror, which I have never read anything like. Shockingly, how I joked about the Natural series and how like I cannot deal with that. Part of that series that I hated was that it was following psychopaths basically and serial killers, and it just felt too real for me, and I really just couldn't read about that. This is a haunted house, haunted town with mythical creatures, which is dark and eerie, but I can actually handle a lot better than a serial killer attacking young women. So I'm not hating this. I do like the writing. There's been a fair few decent amount of tabs I've added to this just because I really like the language. I am just worried that the second half of this book is going to get much scarier. The things that have been hidden and put down might start escaping, and I don't know how I'll handle that. I've been talking about this haunted house, but let me give you some other backstory with like our main character. We follow Opal, who along with this cursed house, cursed town, her life has basically always been cursed. Her mother died in a tragic accident. She was forced to take over at 15, taking care of her brother. She dropped out of high school, was working 2 jobs to try to support them. They live in a motel. Her life is very sad. But to go along with that, she's always had these dreams slash nightmares about this house and their town that no one really knows anything about, called Starling House. And one day on her way home from work, she basically just gets called by the house, and she has a very strange encounter with the man that actually lives there. One way or another, she is invited into the home and she starts spending more time in the home, and things just really escalate from there. We've just gotten to the point where things have really started coming into the light about what's actually going on in this home, rather than just what the tales of the town are regarding the home. A lot going on. It's very eerie, and I just know some terrible things are going to continue to happen, but I have been sitting on my ass on the couch for just like way too long. So we're gonna do another round on the walking pad. I won't force you guys to watch footage like that twice, but I am just gonna spend the next hour listening to this and reading along with it. I think about the time I'll finish this up is going to be around 5 hours left of the readathon. So hopefully we'll have enough time to finish another book afterwards. I am surprisingly liking this, even though it is very much outside of my standard comfort zone. It's very different than what I've read thus far in this readathon and even within 2024 itself. So maybe I'll have to learn more about this genre and expand my horizons. But that is the update for now. Unless something crazy happens, I'll probably chat with you guys whenever I finish this book. We now have 4 hours and 22 minutes left, and I have just finished Starling House by Alix Harrow. Second half of this book, fever dream. Crazy, otherworldly, you don't really know what's going on, what's real or what's reality. There is a messaging to this book. I'm not sure if I fully have grasped the messaging, so I will definitely need to be reading some like Goodreads reviews from people who are smarter than me to see what they've been saying about this. I did enjoy it. I just think maybe, weirdly enough, this book is a little bit too long. Even though this is only 304 pages, the page is very long and there's a lot of words on each page. So I think this could have been cut down a little bit because we did get a little bit lost in the sauce sometimes. I'm happy I gave it a chance, even though it is something a little bit out of my comfort zone. And I wouldn't be opposed to reading other things she's written because I do think she has an enjoyable writing style. Just maybe like the messaging of this story in particular didn't fully resonate, and I wasn't as scared as I thought maybe I would be. So yay for trying new things and for completing our 4th book of the readathon. We're gonna go ahead, hop into book 5. We're gonna be reading Out on a Limb by bonam-young. So I guess it's time to stop yapping so we can go into this 5th book. Okay, it's been a few more hours than I'd like to admit. We have less than an hour left of this readathon, and I am just at about halfway through Out on a Limb. As I mentioned previously, the first time I talked about this book, completely surrounding an accidental pregnancy that happens between Wen and Bo. Both of them have limb differences, and what Wen has actually matches what the author bonam-young has as her limb difference. So every time she talks about it, it feels so real and sincere, and you can really fall into those emotions with the character. I can already tell you halfway through this book that I'm definitely going to be reading more by her. Every single time Bo shows up on page, I am tabbing it. You can tell he is a man written by a woman. The sweetest being in all of the land. He's just literally perfect. I just hope that he doesn't end up veering on the verge of unrealistic because he's so perfect. But I mean, so far he is just so sweet and you absolutely fall in love with him. Their romance so far is really sweet as well. The fact that they both have limb differences, they're able to connect on a different level than most people are able to achieve. We've read a lot of really good books. I think this went so much better than my other readathon, and I've been less miserable throughout it. But I do have to admit, as we get to 50 minutes left, I am extremely tired. And obviously with 50 minutes left, I'm not going to be able to finish this book. I'm going to be able to get, I think, about 2/3 of the way through. So probably whenever I check in tomorrow, I'll be able to give you my final ratings on everything, but I am going to make sure that I have finished this book before I check in, just because I don't want to leave you guys hanging on a 2/3 of the way done book. And I can already tell you right now, to add this to your list, I just don't know if this is going to be a 4-star or a 5-star. So we shall see. I've had a really good time reading these. I've had a really good night. I just got some really good news, which is why I was not reading for a little bit, but I'm having a really great day, and I love that I'm also reading good books. Like, what more can you ask for? So for now, we will continue on, and I will see you guys whenever this timer runs out. Done. At some points, it never feels like it's gonna end, and at other points, you wish that it wouldn't end. I'm right in the middle of a chapter, so I'm probably gonna spend the next few minutes finishing this one up. But I gotta say, this book is still just as cute, just as sweet. Wynn definitely adds a little bit of miscommunication to the story. I'm hoping that this doesn't become the arc for the full story, because it is a pretty weak one, and I'm hoping these two can get it worked out here soon, or else I'm gonna be maybe a little bit annoyed. But let's catch up tomorrow when I'm not exhausted and I can collect my thoughts a little bit more. Did I say in that last clip that I was going to check back in with you guys the next day? Yes. Is it now actually 10 days later? Also yes. But the important thing is, I'm here now to give my final reviews and do a wrap up of this 24-hour readathon. I have to say, overall, I'm so much happier with how this 24-hour readathon went versus my first one. The first one, I was a little confused on what method I wanted to commit to. I said I was gonna do 12 hours a day, but then also was doing the timer method where I would stop and start the timer whenever I was reading versus not. This time, I just let the 12 hours go. And because this one felt so much more manageable, I definitely want to do more in the future. Now, I probably won't be doing them within the next few months with my wedding coming up, but afterwards I think we have a couple 24-hour readathons coming our way. But for now, let's go ahead and hop into the ratings that I gave for these books. I started off the readathon already a portion of the way through in Ember in the Ashes. Overall, a beautifully written book. It is quite emotional and digs into some of the darker parts of society and really doesn't hold back on the brutality that we see within this society specifically. The main drawback for me on this one is that it took me so long to read, just because it was quite dark and emotional. This is just under 450 pages, but due to the breaks that I needed within the story, I wasn't able to fully sink into it. So overall, I gave this a 4 stars. I definitely do want to continue on with the series. I already have book 2, and I'm very excited for where book 2 is going, because I think the plot is going to be much different. Our world's going to be expanded. Hopefully some of the brutality that was mainly directed to our FMC is lessened, and we can get more of those fantastical elements about the story built upon. So I have a lot of high hopes for where this one is going. We just had to spend a lot of time building up the story and building up these characters, and I think overall the first half of the story just went a little bit too slow for me. I cannot believe it, but the second book of this readathon and the second book of 2025 was a 5-star read. I will not shut up to anyone who will listen to me that they need to read Not Another Love Song. I was expecting to like this. I was not expecting to love this. Spoiler alert, I've already read another book by Julie Soto this month, and I think I'm obsessed with her. Cannot wait to read her introduction to fantasy that comes out later this year, because the angst, the tension, the emotional bond we're able to get with these two characters, I'm obsessed. 5 stars, maybe 6 stars, and you need to add this to your TBR yesterday. And then on my Kindle, I read No More Lies by Lucy Score. This was a book that I also was partially through whenever I started the readathon. So this was just a very easy palate cleanser at the end of the day and the start of day 2. 2 stars on this one. I'll be honest, the writing was like genuinely kind of bad, and that makes me sad because I already own book 2. I'm hoping that it was just a rough start to the series, because overall, my biggest complaint about this one is the insta-love was insane. These two were in love with each other by day 4 of knowing one another, and that just felt overall absurd. There was a quote that I was tempted to highlight, but ultimately I didn't, and it was one of their first times having a spicy scene. Again, on like day 4 of knowing each other, there was a comment of like, this isn't just sex, this is the bonding of souls. And I was like, be for real. You guys have not even known each other for a week. So just like overall, absolute mess. And definitely comparing it to Not Another Love Song, it was kind of comical to even read. Moving on to day 2 when I wanted a little bit of a change of pace. Picked up Starling House by Alix Harrow. I mentioned quite a few times that I was genuinely surprised by how much I like this. I think looking ahead towards like fall time this year, I think I should definitely integrate some horror, which is a sentence I never thought I'd be saying to you. Ended up giving this a 3.5 stars because I did like it. I liked the setup of the story, but the overall message and point of the story I don't think fully hit home. Whenever going on Goodreads and looking at some other reviews, I don't think I'm far off in that mindset. I saw a lot of 3.5, 4-star reviews all kind of saying that same thing. So I think this book is worth reading just to see if you're into this genre at all and to try something new. Definitely it being just over 300 pages makes it much more manageable to tackle. I just wouldn't expect going into this book for it to change your life since the messaging was a little bit lost at the end of the story. And finally, what I left you guys hanging on was Out on a Limb by Bonam-young. What a sweet, wholesome story. These two are so freaking sweet together. I didn't know if like maybe Beau is going to end up being too perfect because Homeboy does nothing wrong in this book. Everything you could ever hope for and imagine as the perfect man is Beau, but I mean, you just love him so much that it doesn't even matter. I ended up also giving this a 5 stars, which guys, I'm telling you, I'm so mean. I'm so harsh on books. I cannot believe we have 2 5 stars on a video. Like, this never happens for me. There was some type of shift halfway through the story where I was like, you're so cute, you're so perfect, you're a little bit unrealistic. And then the second half of the story, just like literally every page, I was turning to Hunter and saying, this book is so cute, this book is so cute, this book is so cute. I don't know, something about it, it's so wholesome. If you just want like a feel-good book where you can just root for these characters so thoroughly, definitely add this to your TBR. So won't tell a lie, guys, I don't know if I'm ever gonna have this successful of a reading vlog ever again, but I love that this is the way we're starting 2025. Bringing in good energy for this year ahead. Let's hope we have lots of good books in our future. And I hope that you enjoyed. If you've read any of these books or you have a book that you think I would like, comment down below and let me know. But for now, this is where I will love you and leave you, so thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe before you leave, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye, guys!